That's the rumor. Okay? So life isn't always as smooth as you want it to go. And the second thing that I want you to pay attention as a middle school today is don't judge a book by its cover. You might think you know Mike. You might think you know me and some of your teachers and some of the people in your classroom. But how do you really know them? Don't judge them by the way that they look. You can look up here and you're going to see, you see over here this old timer. Look at these shorts right here. You guys, what do you think about these shorts? Okay? You know, he was a great basketball. All right, hold on. He was a great basketball player back in his day, and his day was a little while ago, and when they wore the short shorts. But, you know, that's a great picture of him, and he's going to talk about that. And then you got another picture of him in the middle, and you can judge him by that picture. And then you got this picture at the end that you might not understand. I'll talk about that. But you can't look at any of those pictures and judge who Mike Alessio is. And I want you to take that today as you listen to him about your classmates. You got new students that start here every now and then. You've got kids that you see in 6th grade, maybe you're an 8th grader, and you look at them and you say, oh, well, the way they dress, that's how they are. Oh, they play sports, that's how they are. Okay? And if you can keep that in your mind today, that's not how people are. Until you take the time to get to know them and learn about them, that's who they really are. And don't judge them by the way they look. And getting to know Mike over the last 7 years has been a journey for me, because I always kind of judged him in all 3 of those phases. And then when I started to get to know him, I understood that this is all who he is. All 3 of these people up here are part of him. And now, at his age, he's one of the most charismatic, energetic, kind, selfless friends that I have. He makes me a better person. And you should put yourself around people that make you better, positive people. So I just need you to give him about an hour. And he's really going to do a great job of talking to you. You're going to enjoy it. I've seen him speak. He does a great job. And it is really, truly a privilege for me to introduce one of the greatest people I know, Mike Alessio.
Holy cow, what an introduction. I might just stop right there. So how's everybody feeling today, junior high students? Good? How many? It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate that great introduction by Coach K, Mr. Corsi as I call him. And as he said, I really should thank Mr. Reinhardt and Mr. Major. They did a great job rearranging the schedule. It's something I do and wanted to do to get a message out to kids. You know, after I do this junior high group and this age group, we're doing the senior high group after that, and I'm very committed to sharing the message of life stories, not just about drugs and alcohol, but about choices and what can happen, because life doesn't always just go like this. There's ups and downs and there's rocky roads. So for them to have rearranged their schedule to allow me to come on up means a lot to me. It should mean a lot to you. They're going to be your teachers and your mentors and these adults in your life. They're going to be critical to your development and coaching you in the right direction. So you gotta give them a chance. Give me a chance, really listen. I know if you're anything like I was, when there was an assembly or a speaker, I always saw it as a good opportunity to catch a little nap, kick back, catch some Z's. But for today, I hope you'll pay attention and listen as closely as you can. And listening and giving and receiving, it's a two-way street. So teachers and mentors, we give, your job you got to receive. And then down the road, you'll be able to offer some people some advice and some direction as well. So for starters, I want up on stage right now to help me out with a little project, Finney and Doherty, come on up. Jared King, Caitlin Korzaneski, she here. Nick Jones, and let's go with Cameron Rook. Come on up, all right? So, you're going to hear a lot of information today. Stand over here, guys. Camera. I'll get with you guys in 1 second. But if I was going to title this presentation, and I do sometimes, I would call it Life Comes at You Fast. And I would say life comes at you fast, be prepared. I also would say life comes at you fast, get in the game. Because you need to understand, and hopefully you'll learn, that it's your life. And we make choices, good choices and bad choices. But in the end, there are decisions. And sometimes our decisions are out of our control when you run into a thing such as the disease of alcoholism or drug addiction or problems like that. So this is what you need to remember. So the first order of business today, I felt, hang on a second, make sure we're on. Okay, now you take the mic for a second. The first thing I had to establish today is that I'm a good guy. All right? I want you guys to think I'm a good guy. So, these people know me, so I thought as a good exercise we would say, am I awesome?
Yeah.
Yes. Am I awesome?
Yes.
Yes. Am I awesome?
Sure.
Sure. Didn't sound very convincing. Am I awesome?
Yeah.
Yes. Am I awesome?
Yeah.
So there's a consensus, I am an awesome guy. Everybody hear that? Okay. Put your hands together, please. Am I a fun guy to be with?
Yeah.
Yeah, fun guy.
Yes.
Fun guy?
Sure.
Sure. Fun guy? Fun guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared, fun guy?
Sometimes.
Oh boy. So, we have now come to the conclusion that I'm a fun guy, I'm an awesome guy. Hang on to that. And this is what you're going to need to remember. There's a saying that adults use, okay? It's called the elephant in the room. Anybody ever hear that? Adults probably have. So what the phrase an elephant in the room, actually come on over here, stand here, is often a situation or something that nobody wants to talk about. So it might be something you see that you're like, oh my God. Or it could be a problem that arises but nobody wants to address it. So knowing me, how you've known me, a lot of you do and you guys do, there might be something on the stage right now that would be considered the elephant in the room. Do you understand what I'm saying? So I want you to confer real quick and say something on this stage. What do you think it would be that's the elephant in the room? Time is up. No. Okay. What on the stage is the elephant in the room? Ah, they got it. They got it. And why is that the elephant in the room, would you say? Well, what is that? What do you call them? Mug shots. And if what you know about mug shots, and you all can say this, are mug shots good or are mug shots bad? Would you say? They're bad. But the point is, and you guys did great, like Coach K said, when you walk out of here today, you need to remember that it wasn't a good situation in that aspect of my life, that time in my life, but it didn't make me a bad person. So people you know, or kids that you meet throughout your life or who run into problems, don't associate that, and it might be you too at some point, with it being a bad person. You get caught up in something and it can happen to good people. So put your hands together for everybody up there. Nicholas is going to stay up here for a second because I got a project for him too. I can hold it for you. So I love talking to this age group because I feel you're still at the innocent stage, all right? You haven't you've heard about things, but you probably haven't had too much hands-on experience. Hopefully, you may have. What grade are we up to in junior high? Eighth grade, okay, so possibility. But you've seen it in TV, movies, and then you probably had some exposure to it back when you did your DARE training program. Now, what grade was that? Fifth grade? Fifth grade was DARE program. So I thought a good start would be to share with you a DARE essay by Nicholas Jones, all right? Which I happen to have saved. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Nicholas Jones. Make sure you're out there. You got it. This is Officer Kip, right?
Never take drugs. The main reason is that you'll have a higher chance to die sooner. Another reason you should never take drugs is that you'll have yellow teeth and bad breath. You should never smoke because it does not just hurt you. In fact, 400,000 Americans die from tobacco-related causes each year. Also, 50,000 deaths in 1 year from secondhand smoking, and that's just about tobacco use. Alcohol is also really bad for you. For example, alcohol can make you lose coordination, have poor judgment, memory loss, and slower reflexes. Alcohol can even damage organs in your body and even lead to coma. Teens definitely should not use alcohol because it affects their body more because they're still growing. DARE is just not about taking drugs, it's also about avoiding bullying and drug offers. When people ask you to do drugs, you have 5 choices. You can avoid drugs, walk away, and say no thank you. And say no, and give an excuse as such, my parents will ground me for life. And one of the best ones is changing the subject. Also, if you're getting bullied or you know someone else is getting bullied, it is important to tell someone you know what, why, when, and where. This will help the person you are telling to trust you more. Always think of positive and the negative things that will happen. All the negative stuff that can happen is why you should never take drugs and know about bullying.
I love the best part of that, with one of his techniques to say no to drugs when someone's offered it, is just change the subject. I wish it was that easy. So once again, as we see what we have there, it's drugs and alcohol and a little bit about smoking, but bad things seen through the eyes of a 8-year-old or 9-year-old. And this is the progress of what your exposure to drugs and alcohol is going to be. So you have that. Now, at this level, at this grade level, and this age, for a presentation like today, it gets a little more serious. I'll share some more stories. And when I do the seniors at 9:15 or the high schoolers, it gets a little more serious. I go in a little more in depth. And the points that everybody needs to take are a little bit different because you, as I said, probably don't have any first-hand experience yet. High schoolers probably do. So what we need to determine today for this group is techniques or things to look out for. And secondly, to know that it happens to everybody, even good people, like I said. So let's start over. My name is Alessio. I'm a manager at Mynderse Dental Laboratory out here. Been there for 23 years. Because of situations like this, I've been fired. It hasn't been a path to the top of the level I'm at now as far as being a manager there, but they stuck with me. So I'm a manager. I'm a father. I'm a coach. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a runner. I'm a triathlete. I'm a drug addict. I'm a son. And I'm a friend to a lot of people. So it would come as no surprise, probably, for everybody to, when you're looking at me, to say, wow, an alcoholic, a drug addict? But that's what I am. And what I'm considered is called a person in recovery. So a person in recovery is, for whatever reason, however you got there, someone who accepted the fact that they were drug addict, an alcoholic, and had those diseases, because it's a disease, or someone that quit doing it. So you're considered, you're in recovery. But I still refer to myself as an alcoholic and a drug addict. Because once you're there, you can't turn back. Once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. So the other phrase that you hear, that I use sometimes, is called clean and sober. So I would say I'm an alcoholic, but I'm clean and sober now. So clean, the clean part of it refers to not doing drugs. So although I've done a lot of drugs, the main drug that I was hooked on and did the most on was cocaine. And when you say you're sober, that just means you don't drink anymore. You don't drink alcohol anymore. So I say I'm clean and sober, and I have been clean and sober for 12 years. There's something called a clean day people refer to, and my clean date is January 1st, 2004. And that's a date I'll always remember. Very nice of you. I wasn't expecting that. So, and it's something I celebrate every year. And a lot of people in programs, when you go to meetings, there's little anniversary chips that you pick up, and you celebrate it. Because when you were this guy, and all the heartache and problems that went around with that, and you're so grateful to have overcome that and put that behind you, that it's something you want to celebrate, it's like a birthday. So part of the day, part of the reason this day is special for me is because I was you. I not only a youth like yourself, but I'm from Seneca Falls. I went to Mynderse. I've sat through assemblies like this. I sat in the same auditorium. And that's why it's special to come speak here in Seneca Falls. My mother was a kindergarten teacher over in Waterloo. We grew up, I actually bought the house that I grew up in, and we lived right down the street. And my father was a principal here in Seneca Falls. And they were great parents. And I had a great family, a brother and sisters that were supportive, and we lived comfortably, and I had, anything I needed, and I was well liked, and I was smart. We had, I don't know what classes are like as far as numbers go these days, but there was 179 in my graduating class. I think it's a lot less now, but and I ended up 20th in my class. Not too shabby. And really, because I started playing around with drugs when I was probably a sophomore and more so a junior in high school, I probably was closer to the top 10, and I started sliding down a little bit when I started dabbling in drugs as early as high school. So there was no reason, you would think, for somebody who was smart and kind of had everything going for him, to have been able to start to creep into that wrong path. And the second part of who I was, which really ended up being the main part of who I was what I was in this picture. And that was a basketball player. And sports was my life. Basketball was my identity. I was a baller. I was walking around town with a basketball, playing anytime I could get. I was down the rec. Back in years ago, down at the state park, there was a court down there. A lot of the best players in the area would go down to, and a lot of older players, and I was always there. I was at camps, you name it. I always had a ball, and it's who I became. And one of the messages today for life, not just sports, that I pass on, and actually maybe my basketball team can help me here. Where's my travel team? Raise your hands. Stand up for a second. Anybody on the team? So what do we say when I say, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable. Good job, guys. There's a test. You'll get to run one last sprint. We have another practice. So that lesson was applied when I was into sports. Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable. You're never going to be perfect, but what you practice is going to be what you do in a situation like this in the game time, but it also is going to be what happens in your life. So when we practice, go to the line every day at practice and get on the line, and I tell everybody 20 foul shots. When we do that every practice, might not be 20, might be 10, 15. We get on there. We're not doing it to be perfect because we know come game time we're not going to shoot 100%. Well, we're hoping to get a certain percentage that's good. We want to be predictable. So we want to know when we go into that game and we're on the line that we're hitting maybe 70% of the shots. In life, what you do will become who you are. So remember that. So I went on to play, this is actually college, and I went on to play in college. And really from the time I was, let's say, a sophomore in high school, being an athlete, I was popular, and it drew me to situations, and this was the start. It drew me to situations, mainly parties and people, where there were drugs and alcohol. And it started in high school, and it carried on through college. And in high school, I didn't get into it too bad. I wasn't getting arrested. I wasn't getting into trouble. I really, you're too close to the situation to identify things that you were doing in high school that when you look back you said, I should have known that. But as I started partying a little bit, an example would be my senior year in high school, I couldn't get up in the morning for school. And my parents kind of turned a blind eye, and I don't know how many school days there are, but I know I signed in late over 80 times, I think it was. And it was a time when nobody kind of asked you about it. So little things like that, I just said, whatever, But my path was being marked by situations like that, and it only got worse. When I was able to muscle my way through college, because remember, what was I out of 179 people? Anybody remember? 20. Good, they're listening. Good job. Smart, almost at genius level, I would say. So I was able to graduate, muscle my way through it. But in college, it's a different story because your parents aren't there. So what happens in college is I was no longer Mike Alessio, student athlete. I was Mike Alessio, basketball player, and heavy partier. I never went to class. I slept all day long until it was time to go to practice. And because of it, and I ended up going to I always played basketball, but I played at 3 different colleges. I ended up at RIT, and I was good. I was a starting point guard. In a lot of ways, although they never elected me captain, which another thing I always felt I should have been, but they knew what was going on. They knew I was a heavy partier. And I let the team down even, but I couldn't see it then. There were nights, many nights, if we had a game on a Saturday, an afternoon game, I might have been partying all night long and never went to sleep and showed up for that basketball game. And when I look back at it, it saddens me, but I also can smile because it was out of my hands. I was already too far gone to have realized what a bad choice that was. And really, I never ended up graduating college. And even at the tender age of, say, 22, I feel that at that point my path had already really been chosen. Although I would have never known at that point, I probably would have been considered an alcoholic and a drug addict at that point. And I can simplify the next 15 years of my life by just saying that it was the same message I just told you, a message of practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable, because I was out at a bar every night. I had gotten a good job. I was a good manager in a restaurant business, but every night when the shift was over, if it was an afternoon or night, I would go right to the bar. I had always had a good job. I had fun girlfriends, good friends, lots of laughs. It was always at a bar, but it was night after night, weekend after weekend, and I always knew that I gotta stop. Inside, I wanted to stop, but it had become so predictable that it turned into that's all I knew. It's all I knew outside of going to work was how to go to a bar and hang out. I was a manager in a restaurant, like I mentioned, and I was single. So in this restaurant business, I would get transferred always, for about every year. And every time I was about to get transferred, I would say, "This is my chance." There always was an excuse. I just got to get away from these people. I get to a new town, I was excited. When I got transferred, some people are sad because you got to leave your friends. I was excited. I was excited because I'm going to this new town, and I'd get transferred and I'd have all my stuff and I'd be so excited. This is it. I'd get to that new town, I'd get a nice apartment. And the first thing I did, because inside, I was still an athlete. I always felt I was an athlete. And I joined the gym. It was going to be my chance I was going to quit everything. I was going to get in shape. I was going to turn it around. And I'd do that for about 2 weeks. And after about 2 weeks, because it was so predictable, the practice made it predictable, I'm just going to go to the bar for a little bit. And I'd go to the bar, and I'd meet somebody who knew somebody, and I'd be there, maybe not the next night, but I'd be there 3 nights later, and the next thing you know, there I was, all over again. I would have had my home bar, I would have had friends, I would have found the people who had drugs, and then it was the same cycle all over again, where I was just living as a drug addict and an alcoholic, but not knowing it. So the question is, that you might be asking is, geez, it just seems like all you had to do is say no. Why didn't you just have the control to say no? Why didn't you have the willpower? And this is the only real textbook definition I'll give you of alcoholism. Because I don't like to get talking about alcoholism and all the ins and outs of the disease. But to keep it simple, this is what happens. Because practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable. You see, the human body is the incredible adapter, an ultimate adapter. So just like when you are injured, you can rehab your knee or whatever it might be to get it back into shape, or if you want to get big and you lift weights, you train your body, predictable, and you get bigger. It's the same thing with bad habits. And let's say if it's alcohol. I drank so much that my body became used to it always being in my system. And what happens is, envision it like a little switch in your body. And then at some point, and I don't know what point that was, that switch goes on. And when the switch goes on, it means my body now needs alcohol. And once it goes on, it doesn't go off. And what the switch is, it's called the phenomenon of craving. So what my body is telling me, the chemistry in my body, the cells in my body have changed, and what happens is, it convinces me that it's okay to drink alcohol, and that it always wants more. So for some people, listen, a lot of people drink. You guys know that. A lot of parents probably have a beer and go home, or have a beer with dinner and go home or something. Well, what had happened with me was, I couldn't just have one drink. If I went to a bar, if I have a drink and my body gets introduced to alcohol, now it wants more. And excessively more. And because I also did drugs, that led me to, once I started drinking, I said, you know, it'd be fun to also do some drugs tonight. And then the next thing you know, it was a late night. And very often, a lot of nights, I was out probably every night. I remember at one point when I then got clean and sober, thinking back about, you know, the weekends when you didn't have to work, that was really bad because you'd go out all night, sleep all day, and I'd be so tired on Monday morning, and then you just do the same thing over and over again. And I remember thinking, there probably wasn't, in 15 years, a weekend where I wasn't partying hard, and you know, how sad is that? So the thing my body also adapted to, was, besides the fact that I had to have alcohol, it adapted to know that, for me, I also had to get to work. So my body had adapted to know that I had to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, regardless of what I did the night before, and my body knew that. So it knew that, hey, you got to muscle your way through that day. So I could I could go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and get up at 6, shower, some coffee, you know, go to work and muscle my way through another day. And so many times I'd go to work and say, oh, I can't wait to get through this day. Just going to go home. I'm so tired. I'm going home and I'm going to sleep. And then what alcoholism does, I start feeling better about 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock. What do you think I did? Went out. 5 o'clock, I say, you know what? I don't feel that bad right now. I'd say, just go out for one tonight. And my thing, when I was out in town, always doing shots. You know, I don't know if you guys even know what that is. It's when you do like a little alcohol in a little shot glass. It's, you know, really gives you a quick boost, right? That was my thing. I was a shot king in Seneca Falls. Ask Corsi. He's seen me in action for a couple years. I'd buy him for everybody. And that's when I say, you know what? I'm just going to go out for a drink, no shots tonight. And I would sit at the bar, order a drink, and I wouldn't even be having 2 sips out of that drink yet, and I'd be ordering another shot. So you see that it's often unmanageable, and so I say, why didn't I see it? Or, I mean, everybody knew what I was doing. Why didn't they see it? Why didn't somebody try to help me? And this is why, because I was a manager. I mean, I was down the bar in a tie. You know, I might be drinking nice wine out of a fancy glass or a scotch. You know, I was just a social guy, convinced that, you know, I was just out there living like a lot of guys. But the disease had gotten a hold of me. So bear with me 1 second, because I'm going to tell you what the problem is. Let me get my costume on here. Hang on, I'm almost ready. This is the problem with society and why I didn't think I had a problem. It's because when people think about what an alcoholic is, This is a bottle of booze in a plastic, in a paper bag. This is what everybody always thinks an alcoholic is. You think it's some loser, bum. Every movie, what do you normally see? When you're watching any TV or movie, where are they normally? Right here. Who's that guy? He's laying on the ground, and he's got a bottle of booze, and he stinks, and even every town has one. But this is why Mike Alessio didn't think he was an alcoholic, because this guy's an alcoholic. But that's not the case, and that's what you guys remember. And remember, like I told you when we did the elephant in the room exercise, it happens to good people. This guy might be an alcoholic, but 90% of the people are point guards at RIT who nobody would suspect has a problem. Or managers at Bonadent who nobody has a problem. Those are the guys who we don't want to address it because we think that only these guys are alcoholics. So what happened with me was I'm out partying. I'm back in town now, actually. And I started to get DWIs. DWIs, you know, it's when you get arrested. You know, you can't drive over a limit after you've had too much to drink. I got one DWI. I was screwing up at work, calling in sick. It started to get worse, where, like I told you, where my body used to be able to adapt every day. Some days it was just too much, and I call in, and they really knew what was going on. But you know, as a man, you're entitled to your sick days and whatever. But they knew why. I apologized years later that I could tell you in the 15 years, let's say, I was with Bonadent, and I used up my vacation time that I had every year. Any time I had ever taken a vacation day at my place of work at Bonadent was because I was either hungover or still doing drugs from the night before. And I had to make amends on that and apologize, but that's how hard this disease can get a hold of you. And I had gotten one DWI, and what happens when you get a second DWI within 10 years? It's called a felony, and that's a pretty big offense. And so what they had done was, there was a program that they put me in to try to help me out. And they help not just me, but other people. It's called drug court. And what they do is, it's a pretty intense program. They want you to clean up. You know, you're obligated to go to meetings, and you got to go to therapy, and you have to go to court every Friday, and they drug test you, and they ask, you got to get up in front of the judge, and there's a drug court team, and they ask you questions, how your week's going. I was like, and so it was an opportunity to kind of, for me, get out of the charges. That's what I was looking at. I didn't want a felony on my record, so drug court was a good opportunity. So I was appreciative that they gave me that opportunity, but I never quit drinking. And even when all the therapy, they put me in rehab for, well, I had lost my job at Bonadent at that point. They had put me in rehab. I had gone to rehab, and I listened, and I said, you know, maybe I can do this. And when I got out of rehab, I was so excited, and one day later, I was drunk. And so that went on in drug court with me lying to them and them thinking I was doing well for probably close to a year. And one day I walked into drug court, and not only was I, you know, you would think in a small town, in the drug court in the small town, that if you were going to drink, you might just like drink in your back room at home or something, you know, to hide it. But not me, because I wasn't a home drinker. I still was going out to the bars, and there were only 2 of them in Seneca Falls. So I really think in the end, they might have known all along, but were just praying for me. They loved me so much. It's so embarrassing that I let them down. But, hey, it is what it is. And so one day I walked in, and get up on that stand. It was a podium just like this. And it was Judge Mack was the guy's name, a big, bald guy, loved me to death like a father, but could be scary looking. And like every other week, you got up there, how you doing, Mike? And I'd lie, and I was good at it. Another great week, Judge. I love being sober and clean. Changed my life. Really, Mike? That's right. Do you ever drink citron and soda, Mike? So that's vodka and soda. That was my drink, right? I knew the jig was up right then. Because I had been out down drinking. He said, were you at the flats over the weekend, Mike? And at that point, I didn't even bother lying anymore. I knew it was done. And they threw me in jail. They had it, and I never would have thought that would have been anything special in that day. I didn't plan on quitting drinking, but I was on my way to jail. And I remember sitting in that jail cell, and I ended up being there for a little bit. And when you go to jail, the first 24 hours, you're in isolation in just a small little jail cell that you have to sit in before they put you in the general population with other inmates. And I remember sitting there, and I put my head down, and all I could think about was this guy. I was 41 years old, and I put my head down and just said, what happened? And I cried because just like you guys, all the hopes and dreams of this guy, in the blink of an eye, life had just passed me by, it seemed. And there I was, sitting in jail. And I was so sad. And they let me out into the, so I'm in jail, and at that point, I still didn't think I had a problem. I said, you know what? Heck with them at court. Because the thing about jail for me was, I learned that I could do time. I could have stayed in jail. They knew I was at Bonnet. Again, I had come back to Bonnet. They'd hired me back because they believed me too. They believed my lies too. And they knew I was a manager at Bonnet, and there were mostly kids in jail. I was smart. What was I in my class? 20th, all right? I was like the king of jail. And I convinced myself, even as smart I am, this is cool. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to ride out my time. I'll do 8 months or a year, and then I'll get out, and I'll show everybody. And that's when something changed. The corrections officer came up to me, and it wasn't even visitation time, and he said, Alessio, he says, you got some visitors. And took me down to the visitation room, and I'm in my orange suit, and in came walking in two of my co-managers, and the owner of my company, Bruce Bonfigli. And they sat across from me, and they said, we love you, and we believe in you, and we're never going to give up on you. And whatever's got a hold of you, whatever this is, we're going to figure out a way to get overcome. And as you can imagine, even now, it's emotional, and it was then. And they left, and they said, and we'll see you back at work whenever you get out, whenever you're done. So that day, as it turns out, was January 1st, 2004. And you might remember that day from earlier, because that's the day, although I didn't intend on staying sober, I never drank again. And I never did drugs again after that day. Message 2 for you is there's no such thing as a problem in life without a gift for you in its hand. So your problems might not be drugs, alcohol, there could be a wide thing. You're all going to run into problems. That's one thing I can guarantee you. But always remember, hang on a second.
Must have been the tears.
Could have been the tears. Well, I can always go to this point. This is the ability to adapt, folks. That's why I did that on purpose. So, you're always going to run into problems, and it might be this, but there always will be a gift for you. That's what I want you to remember. You just have to identify it and know you can overcome it. So the difference for me this time was that I reached out. When I got out of jail, I took it a little more seriously. I reached out to others, and the main thing that forced me, because I still don't know if I had it set to want to stop drinking. I knew I had to at that point. But this was the difference in what helped me to stay sober. And I'm telling you this because a lot of times, certainly with drugs and alcohol, you can't do it on your own. The first thing you need to realize is accept that you got a problem, but you can't do it on your own 99% of the time. So one of the things that they forced me to do when I got out, I was still in drug court, and what they told me to do was they put me on what's called like a house arrest. So I had this ankle bracelet on. You might have heard of those in your life, I don't know. But you got to wear it on. It's locked on, so they always know where you're at. And then inside my house was this thing called a sobriety. And this sobriety works in conjunction with this ankle bracelet. And when I come walking in my house from work, because I can only go back and forth from work, this thing starts going off with sirens. And I got a certain amount of time I can pick it up, and I pick it up, and I got to blow into it. And then this thing detects and goes right to the probation department whether I have any alcohol on my breath or any blood alcohol content in my system. So there was no way I could drink and get away with it anymore. And I was on that thing. I had 6 months more of drug court, and they told me I could get off of that sobriety to give myself a couple months on my own to test, in 4 months if I wanted to. They say to this day that I was the only one when offered to get off the house arrest and the sobriety. I said no, because I wasn't confident that I could do it on my own. I felt I needed a little more time. So it forced me in the end to stay sober for, at that point, 6 months. No drugs, no alcohol, and I felt great. I had been hungover 360 days of the year practically. Maybe there's a sprinkling of 5 days where I wasn't hungover for whatever reason. I went to bed early. But I never experienced that before. And I was starting to work out. I was doing way better at work. And I felt like I could do anything. And that is the only reason I ended up staying sober, was because I was forced to try to experience what life can be like. And it became a new practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable. I was changing what the predictable part was going to be. It was going to be the guy I felt I was always meant to be, and I had different purpose. And I was helping people too. People saw I was sober, so there were new people coming in. I was saying, hey, I'm only 6 months sober, but I'm doing it. You can do it too, even though you're only sober 2 days. And I was doing other things. You know, I embarked on a journey to do a triathlon there's something called the Ironman Triathlon. And back when I was drinking in like 30, I always loved the Ironman. It's on TV. I always said, man, would that be cool to do? They say it's the toughest race in the world. And I said, I'd love to do that. You do a 2.4 mile swim. Then you change into bike gear. You do a 112 mile bike. And then you change again into running gear and you run a marathon, 26.2 miles. Say it's the toughest race in the world. So the problem with that, when I decided to, so there's a guy in town who had done it, and I'd see him and I'd say, hey, can I get some of your magazines? How was it? How'd you do it? And I'd look at the magazines and then go out and get drunk and look at the magazines and never did anything about it. This time I said, you can do this. The problem was, I didn't know how to swim. That was going to be a little problem when you have to swim 2.4 miles and you go down to the college pool and you can't make it to the end without stopping. Okay. So that was scary that I even tried to do it. And swimming was scary, and I didn't put as much into it as I should have. And I still wasn't a great swimmer, but I decided, I trained on everything else. I was convinced I could make it. I had signed up for it, and I went up to Lake Placid and gave it a shot. There's cutoff points at these Ironman, meaning you got 2 hours and 20 minutes to do your 2.4 mile swim. If you don't make it, they pull you out of the race, okay? Last thing I remember, well, one of the last things besides coming out of the water, I was coming down, there's probably 400 yards left, and there's an announcer, and he announces, and here comes the last swimmer. It looks like he's gonna make it. I got about 100 yards away, and I was struggling. And I rolled over on my back, and I hear him, the announcer, go, "Oh no." And I knew that wasn't good, so I got back over, and I made it down, and I got out of the water in 2 hours and 14 minutes. And I knew once I made that I'd be okay the rest of the way. So on July 25th, 2007, I was 4 years sober. That's a picture of me crossing the Ironman finish line, and it was an accomplishment that I'm proud of, and it was fun to do. I did 2 more since then, and run a lot of marathons. I ended up being a decent runner, so I've run Boston Marathon. It ended up being my shtick, you know. Corsi and I do Muscle Man and stuff, and it keeps me healthy. It keeps me motivated to do things like that, and it was a neat thing to do, and most importantly, I could only do it because I was clean and sober, and I had seen purpose in that, and I had had the drive to want to do something that you don't think you can do, or that you just want to strive for and set goals high, and I don't even know what the next goal is going to be. But there was other things in life. I mean, I don't want you to think that, you know, it wasn't just about sports or doing the Ironman. That's not my claim to fame. You know, I was 50 years old, and I had always seen all my friends get married and have kids, and I figured, well, you know, that boat just sailed on you. That's okay. It wasn't in the cards. But I got married and had a beautiful wedding. And 250 of my friends and family were there, and I got a beautiful son, Nicholas, you know, out of the deal, and I'm proud of that. But of all things that I'm proud of, and no matter what else in life that happens, it will always be the thing I'm most proud of, is in regards to my family. And you know, when you go through something like this, there's a lot of heartache, family members are hurt, they care so deeply, they want you to succeed, they don't understand, and your parents are normally the ones that are just watching you and crying. And as I was drinking, my parents were getting older, And I remember always sitting at the bar wondering, what are you going to do if you get a phone call that something happened to mom or dad? And because they were at that age. And you're going to have to go to the hospital, and your family's going to be there, and whatever's happening, and you're going to be drunk, and it's going to be an embarrassment. I would think those things. Well, that phone call came on April 23rd, 2008. And I was able to go sit with my mom in the hospital bed, where she was so proud of me for being sober, clean and sober. And I was able to hold her hand with the respect that she deserved as a mother, clean and sober and not smelling like alcohol. And she was a lady that watched me as a 41-year-old graduate drug court, and she had a smile on her face just as big as when I graduated high school. And that'll always be the thing I was most proud of, that I was able to send her on her next journey, seeing me succeeding in life. If I was going to tell you one thing to close things out, this is who I am today. You guys hear it. I'm an athlete, an Ironman, a good coach. I do a lot in the community. This is who I was. But when you guys leave today, as far as the images or the pictures go, this is what I want you to remember. And that's why I made it the biggest of all of the images, is because I want you to remember the possibilities of what can happen when you go down the wrong path, even if you're a good person, and you're all good people. Many times I had come to a fork in the road where you have to make decisions. And, hang on one second. I didn't want my alarm going off. I'm running a hair over. Forks in the road where you have to make choices. And I always knew what the right choice was. I always knew what the right path was, but I never took it because it was too hard. I always took the easy way out, and I always took the easy path, and that's how I ended up where I did. If I could leave you with one thing, and the most important thing, besides practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes predictable. If I could tell you one thing you needed to focus on in order to make good choices and go down that right path, it is the word awareness. You pay attention to what's going on around you. Pay attention to your feelings. Pay attention to your reactions. Pay attention to your tendencies and your habits. If in your head you're questioning whether or not you should do something, chances are you probably shouldn't do it. Remember that. And most of all, I told you, remember, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes predictable. Why does it happen? Why does this happen? It's simple. We get involved with drugs and alcohol because it opens us up. You know, I was shy. It helps us to fit in at first. It levels the playing field. Everybody's having a good time, all right? I mean, everybody's equal when we're all using drugs or alcohol. How do you know what's happening to you? You aren't yourself, maybe. You think about drugs and alcohol too much. You find yourself doing it when you don't want to, or you didn't intend to. Maybe you miss, or you're late for school like I was. Maybe you miss practice. Maybe you drop out of activities that you used to love. All those are little signs that something might be going on. And most importantly, if it does happen, if you are concerned that maybe you got an issue, you got to open your mouth. It's hard because nobody wants to feel that they couldn't do something on your own, but you have to understand and believe that just like this guy went to this guy, there's a way out and it can be overcome. You only have this life once, and ask for help. And it doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of ways to ask for help. It could be certain teachers, people like me. You got to open your mouth. I want to close by saying three things that could be preemptive or preventative in developing who you are, that will help you and help you to grow and blossom into a great person, is know yourself, be proud of who you are and what you do, walk tall, respect others, respect yourself. Be yourself. You're very unique. You have everything you need inside of you to take the world by storm. I love what this is, a poem by Dr. Seuss that says, today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. And that rings true because you all have it inside you. And like yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Know that you're a good person and that you are doing the right thing. Be happy, smile, enjoy life. My name is Alessio. I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, and I decided to get off the sidelines, make a change, and get in the game of life. You guys make sure you get in the game of life too. Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Reinhardt, you want to mention to him that I'll be around?